Thanks to John, and thanks to all the folks that made this happen. It's my first time at the Institute, hopefully not the last. I've learned a ton, I've met some wonderful people, and this is a grand event. Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk about, I kind of expanded my title, so if you're reading off the program, I was supposed to talk to us about strengths and well-being, but I decided, okay, I'll throw in hope and engagement as well. Hope came up a lot over the conference, which I appreciate. Engagement is something we all think about and talk about. I'll talk about it in a slightly different way, but I really think that those four go together. Now, as I walked through my experience at the conference, I learned a lot, and there was a lot to condense and consolidate. So what I'm trying to do is leave you with four words: strengths, hope, engagement, well-being. And then one thought: those are good. So if we can, on campuses, identify and develop strengths, if we can promote hope, if we can get students more engaged, if we can bump up their well-being, we're golden. Okay? So when you think about this whole big field of positive psychology, all that we know in higher education, all that we're learning to apply in behavioral economics about student choice, think about all that stuff. It's a lot of reading, it's a lot of different programs, it's a lot of different opinions, but I think this is what it boils down to: strengths, hope, engagement, and well-being. I'm going to unpack that a little bit. I'm going to kind of ping off some things that have been discussed throughout the last 2 days, and hopefully make sense out of these four constructs. I am feeling a little bit under the weather when I'm wearing my green cape. James left it for me before he left, so it's kind of tucked in. But hopefully, if you can't hear me back there, just let me know, and I'll try to speak a little louder. Those folks who have to catch a plane and will miss the best 10 minutes of my presentation at the very end, here are the takeaways. Hope and engagement and well-being matter. They matter, and they constitute a trifecta of positive student outcomes. They matter, and they constitute a trifecta of positive student outcomes. I have to admit, I was raised at the racetrack by my grandfather. It was an illegal dirt track in South Louisiana. On Friday nights, my grandma would take me to the illegal poker game that she ran. I was actually Cajun bourrée, so it's a Cajun form of poker. And then my grandfather would take me to the rooster fights on Saturday. And then the whole family would go to the racetrack on Sunday. Very good family activity. That's where I learned the term trifecta. So I'm betting on a college student trifecta here, where hope, engagement, and well-being kind of win out. They are things that we're focused on, we're betting on them every time, and we want them to go win, place, and show every time for our students. Strengths drive hope, engagement, and well-being. So there's no magic elixir, there's no magic wand, there's no silver bullet, there's none of this stuff. However, strengths helps with hope, building strengths helps with engagement, building strengths helps with well-being. So if we're looking for that one thing to turn the dial on those other three, then strengths might be it. Engagement actually has an interesting relationship with well-being, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Hope, if you take hope and optimism, put them together, we just did this in a sample of about 360 students, you can predict 70% of the variance in well-being. 70% of the variance. So we did a structural equation model with college students, all kinds of fancy stats. Basically, hope and optimism are distinct, yet related, and they predict 70% of the variance in well-being. So they have to be, it has to be part of the equation. Hope out-predicted optimism, and I always love to say that. Hope out-predicted optimism. Campuses can cultivate positive psychology. It is as easy as changing a light bulb. Okay, let's talk about how easy that is. Compact fluorescent light bulbs. Who's heard of them? The little curly Q light bulbs? Raise your hand high if you've heard of them. Okay, very good. All right, raise your hand high if you know they're good for the environment, except for disposal. Okay? Okay. Raise your hand again if you bought one. All right. Okay, so now, we know it's a good idea. We know it's good for the environment. Okay? Home Depot will recycle them for free. All right? Take your compact fluorescents 10 years from now when it burns out, that one you bought, bring it over to Home Depot, give it to them, they will recycle it for free. So you don't have to worry about kind of the gases that are caught up in the light bulb, okay? Tom Friedman and other folks, they convinced us this is a good thing. Now, so we should all have, I'm going to say 75% of our light bulbs at home changed over to CFLs. Raise your hand if 75% or more of your light bulbs are changed over to CFLs. Okay, if you look around, the number cut in half. Dropped off, big time. Everybody knows about them. Most people think they're a good idea. Everybody's bought at least one. Only half of those folks have really changed. Why is that? It's a good idea. We know about it. Not too expensive. But we haven't converted to CFLs. Any guesses why?
Some people don't like the light they put up.
Some people don't like the light they give off. And that's a brand issue. When you look across brands, if you buy just 3 different brands, there's one of the 3 that will be closer to the light that you're accustomed to. So I went through that phase too. I'm kind of live in the dark, my wife says. I have 1 lamp in my study and 6 windows. So at night, there's 1 lamp. And I do everything by that 1 lamp. And I had this bluish light, and I just didn't like it. But I changed brands. I got the right tone and ambiance I was looking for. What's another reason we don't change?
We're cognitively conservative.
We're cognitively conservative. Can you say more about that? I love that.
It's really hard to change an initial set of things you know or think about.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love this. Okay, let's add to that.
Well, mine is, you still have the old kind left and you don't want to waste them.
Well, sure. We got to trot out that old light bulb because we don't want to waste that 59 cents. We don't want to give it to Goodwill. We don't want to give it to Salvation Army. Man, we got it. We don't want to use it for target practice. We don't want something different. It's not what we're accustomed to. We're cognitively conservative. We've got some of the old stuff. Isn't that kind of what we talk about when we're changing our university? It's a little bit different. You know, dare I say new agey. You know, people may say it's kind of fluffy to have those CFLs in my house. Oh, you're going green. I hate people who go green. You know, about that. Then there's the issue of I've got some old stuff I got to try out. You know, we've got a bunch of program books. This program doesn't work, but we ordered 200 books. We got 50 left. We got it. What are we going to do if we don't use these books? And then we're cognitively conservative. We operate by a status quo bias. It's how we manage the world. So much stuff is coming in. You learn so much stuff in the last 2 days. But then when you go back to campus, you're thinking, well, my stuff's okay, and I'm going to stay the same. I was influenced a little bit, but I'm going to stay the same. Because it's hard. It's hard to incorporate new ideas, change old ideas, and move. So that thinking comes out of a lot of different literatures, but most famously out of Kahneman's studies on looking at uncertainty in our lives and figuring out how to frame ideas for change and then moving forward. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty on our campuses. Our students are dealing with a lot of uncertainty. And I think now more than ever, we may be scared to change light bulbs. Okay, but that's exactly what I'm going to encourage you to do. Now I'm going to talk about 1,100,011 students. First student is mine. He's a preschooler. The next 10 are 10 students who were on academic probation at the University of Kansas. They were in the course called Student Success. When you're near failure, let's call the course Student Success, and that'll make it okay. So they were in that course. So I'll talk about my chats with them, and then I'll talk about the data we have on 100,000 5th through 12th graders and how it relates to you on campuses. And then I'll talk about the million students that were surveyed next month. So let's start with the preschooler. It's in my son's contract that I get to use 3 slides of him being cute. And that's him a few weeks ago in front of the house sledding. And he's You know, he is cute. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. He's damn cute. And he's a hopeful little creature. Okay? He wakes up in the morning, he comes over to our room, and he goes, "What are we doing today?" I'm like, "I don't know, buddy, I'm still sleeping." "Well, I have some ideas." And that morning, he decided, we're going sledding. I said, "Buddy, I don't want to go to the park." He goes, "Well, how about the hill in front of our house?" I mean, we have a slope. You can see there's a slight slope. I'm like, okay. And then he realized there was ice under the snow on the driveway, and that's where we did the sledding, okay? But very hopeful guy, wakes up in the morning, has, you know, not sure about where he's headed, then he kind of zones in and fixes in on a goal, and then he says, "I'm going to do that." And I'm like, as long as you put your coat, hat, and gloves on, go do whatever you want. So that morning, he went sledding, then I went sledding, my wife went sledding, his grandparents went sledding, all in the front yard. We had a grand time, and it was initiated by this little guy. Very hopeful creature. Now, he has a very good life. I love the video you shared yesterday. I mean, if you ask Parrish what he wants to do when he grows up, sledding, basketball, you know, the stuff I do now. It won't get any better than this. And I think this next picture tells a story. It doesn't get much better than this, okay? There he is with his little posse. That's Kate, that's Abby, and that's Ashton, otherwise known as Kate Bobates, Abby Cadabby, and Ashton Bobashton. That's what we call them. Where was this picture taken? At his school. He goes to the only strengths-based preschool in the world, at Gallup. So I drive into work in the morning, and I drop him off at a strengths-based preschool, where every day they get meaningful praise and recognition. Every day they get attention to what they do best. Every day they have a whole lot of fun. And every day they complete projects. Every day. But I don't, you know, I think he's doing okay. I think he's doing okay. And when I said it doesn't get any better than this, some data we have show it doesn't get any better than this. Okay? It will stay at this level until we're in about 5th grade, and then our engagement and well-being will drop till we're in 12th grade. And then you say hello to folks who have been on a precipitous decline for the last 7 years. Okay? So when I think about the happiest place on earth, he's there. In fact, when he asked about Disney, I said, "Dude, we took you there last year, don't you remember?" And I'll show him some mouse ears and stuff. He goes, "Oh yeah, I was 2, I don't remember." So that's my story. We didn't really take him. I'm just telling you. And it saved me tons of money. Oh, yeah. I know when we went to Disney, and I'm like, "Yeah, I remember." So for those of you thinking about having kids. So it doesn't get much better than this. When I talk to him about his future, what does he want to be? He does want to sled, and he's very good about prioritizing. He goes, basketball player, football player, baseball player, volleyball player. No, make that volleyball player 3rd. Yeah, that's it. And then I said, "Well, what else do you want to be?" And he'll say, "I want to be a rock star." And so while I'm away, as in yesterday, he got a faux hawk because he thinks that's cool. It's a rocker shag. So that's his little haircut lady cat. So that's my latest picture there. So his life will not, this is sad to say, get much better than it is today. Okay? He'll go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, and hopefully he'll get back to where he is today. And I struggle with that. I struggle with that a lot because he's, you know, I want him, we've asked 1,000 moms, what do you want for your kids? And what's number 1? Happy. Happy. I want him to be happy. I want him to be happy. I struggle with this so much. So my job now is to make sure he doesn't deviate too much from where he is right now. Or in other words, I hope I don't screw them up. And I hope K through 12 doesn't screw him up. And I hope college doesn't screw him up. And I hope his job doesn't screw him up. Now, I do want to go back to one thing. When he talks about the future, and he goes to school, and he's been on 20 different college campuses, he knows all about education as much as a 3.5-year-old can know. When I say, what do you want to do when you grow up? He never says be a college graduate. Okay? And when you ask people, what do you want to do when you grow up? Rarely do you hear, I want to be a college graduate. Okay? What do you want to do? What's your big goal in life? Most people jump over that. And they focus on the what? The job. So either by culture or by how our brain works, people jump over us and focus on the job. And I want to come back to that.
But isn't that assumed? You know, when I talk to students, many students that I have say college is just grade 13. It's assumed.
Yeah.
You know, you go from 8 to 9, you go from 12 to 13.
Right. And I'll buy that. Phyllis has a good point. Isn't that assumed? But when we think about how goals work and how goals affect our thinking, we target resources to the goals that drive us. Okay? And if the goal that drives us is getting a good job one day, so I can have wealth, happiness, security, health care, family, and that's the goal that's really we're focusing on, then the assumption becomes kind of a thought that we may not target enough resources toward. Okay? And we've heard this from Bill Gates. You know, if we link more relevance to what we're doing in high school and college, then kids might get a little more excited about what they're doing and then get to their goal box a little better. Let me talk about engagement for a little bit. I met with these 10 college students. They're in this student success course. I was invited over to visit with them to talk about strengths. They had taken strengths quests. I was going to talk to them about their strengths. I'd done this dozens of times before. I walk into the building. Well, I'm walking to the building, and to be honest, I was a little hungry. Okay, it was about, I think it was a noon class. So I was walking to the building. I'm like, oh, great, it's in this building, which has a little food court in it. So after class, I'll get some food. Walk into the class, and I see these guys just, I mean, they were just demoralized. They just looked demoralized. They were tired. You know, I heard some stomachs rumbling. They were like, who's this bozo? You know, they weren't really happy to be there. They weren't really happy to see me. So my friend Shanda, who teaches the class, I went over to Shanda and I said, can I take these guys to lunch? She said, what? I said, can I take these guys to lunch? She says, yeah. I said, hey guys, let's go to lunch. We walked downstairs. I said, get whatever you want. I bought them lunch. We sat down at a big old table and we talked about their strengths. Okay? Did what I would normally do in class, but over lunch. And they were kind of poking me and he goes, you don't mind being seen with us? I'm like, no. I'm a professor, you're a student, this is what we do. I said, but you're eating lunch with us in public. Like, yeah. A lot of professors do that. Well, I've never had a professor do that. So we got under that, and I said, well, tell me about your best friends on campus. 9 out of 10 didn't have best friends on campus. Okay? So strengths can make a difference because I can encourage them to do more of what they do best every day. But I can't necessarily make them have best friends on campus. However, I mean, maybe we can think about ways to do that. But what I learned from that day is not the power of strengths, but the power of engagement. These students were not engaged. These 1 or 2 maybe were actively disengaged. The rest were not engaged. And they were not engaged because they didn't have people in their lives that made them feel like they mattered at school. They didn't have engagement that day. That sense of belonging, that sense of mattering was a big deal. 100,000 5th through 12th graders. We've surveyed 100,000 of these kids using what I'll introduce to you in a little bit, the Gallup student poll. And I have this hybrid job where I do a lot of stuff on strengths and a lot of stuff on hope, engagement, and well-being. And they kind of work very nicely together. But on the Gallup side of my job, we're launching something called the Gallup student poll. So our pilot was 100,000 people. I love saying that. Our pilot was 100,000 people. And in that pilot, we learned that well-being was a big driver of academic success. In that pilot, we learned that well-being peaked at 5th grade, just like engagement. It went down. Now, I'll show you some slides later about this data. And what I want you to realize is that the students who dropped out, who were at the lowest point of engagement and well-being, are not even in the data set. Because everything was school-based. And this data still. So we're not accounting for the cases that had so much suffering, so much disengagement that they left. We're just accounting for the students who actually showed up on the day to take the survey. Okay? So well-being becomes a big player in this equation. And if you're suffering, and I'll talk about what that means later, but if you're suffering, and 5% of your students are suffering wherever you are, 5% of Americans are suffering, which is one of the lowest suffering rates across the world. But 5% of your students are suffering, they have about a 6 in 10 to an 8 in 10 chance of being actively disengaged from the college experience. Okay? So that's what we learned from high schoolers and middle schoolers, and it also generalizes to your students. 1 million American students in March. We have about 1 million American students signed up to take the Gallup student poll, 5th grade through college. And that's our second pilot. I love saying 1 million American students, second pilot. Yes, sir?
Could you elaborate a little more on well-being?
Yeah.
Are you using that to mean the absence of suffering?
Let me get back to that, because I actually will kind of break it down for you, okay? But I'm trying to sneak up on that. And I'll do that through a few questions. But it's a great question. Sorry if my slides are kind of high there. The big questions, okay? So if you want to get at hope, engagement, and well-being and not use a measure, here are 3 questions that you can use. So the first question is, what are your hopes and wishes for the future? And actually talking to students about their hopes and wishes for the future and helping them frame those hopes and wishes in such a way that they become actionable goals. Who makes you feel like you matter? My friend Tom Rath worked in a homeless shelter, and this was the question that he led a lot of his consultations with. So homeless guys, typically guys who come into the shelter and want to talk about resources, and Tom said, well, your number one resource is other people. He makes you feel like you matter. And once we can really understand how grandma is motivating a student, and how best friend is motivating a student, and how mentor is motivating a student, then we can tap into that motivation. And you'll see these questions, I see a lot of you writing, you'll see these questions 3 or 4 times, so you need not get all of them. The next question, we've been using for 50 years at Gallup. Pew uses it, lots of other folks use it. It was developed on the Princeton campus by a guy named Hadley Cantrell. Some of you may know Hadley's previous work. He was the guy who measured terror after Orson Welles did his little stunt and War of the Worlds. So Hadley said, and Orson apparently did that right down the street from Princeton University. Hadley said, it will scare the hell out of people. Let's find out more. Then he switched his work over the years to people are hopeful. Let's find out more. And then he did a 13-country study. And this was kind of the question he used to look at well-being among folks. And that question is, and we can play this game along, imagine a ladder standing before you. The top rung is 10, and the bottom rung is 0. On which step of the ladder do you stand today? Take a snapshot, number between 0 and 10. I can say today I'm 7. Okay? Imagine that same ladder 5 years from now. On which step of the ladder will you stand on in 5 years? Okay, take a snapshot. I can say my number today is enough. Okay? And that's a little bit higher than the national average for Americans. It's usually around 6 to 7, and then somewhere between 8 to 9 on the future. Now, these are 3 questions that are proxies for measuring hope, engagement, and well-being. Okay? And if you're thinking, oh, not my engagement, that's cool. All right? We're looking at an engagement that is all about satisfaction with and excitement for, enthusiasm for what you're doing right now in school. Okay? Now, I'm going to come back to these in different ways over the next few slides. Maybe. Oh, gosh, again, I'm so sorry about the top there. Basically what that says is hope in Americans and across the world. So we've asked that question. What are your hopes and wishes for the future? We've asked that question of 1,000 Americans and then 139,000 other folks across the world. And the data line up very nicely across the world. These are the American data. These categories were mentioned by 3% or more of the sample, okay? And so these are folks 15 up on up. And this is what Americans, these are their hopes and wishes for the future. Health, wealth, happiness. Healthy, happy, safe, close family. More of the same. Okay, more of the same. In that way, that may represent a cognitively conservative approach, or in a Chris Peterson kind of way. I don't think Chris is here. Last night, I grabbed a juice and sat down with Chris, and he said, "Well, tell me about leaving KU and what that meant," because I was at the University of Kansas. And you know, I made up some story, and he goes, "I could never do that. I love what I'm doing right now, and I'm scared to leave it." So it's both. It's that I love it, and I don't know what it is on the other side. Okay, so some people are talking about that. Good job. Across the world, this pops up. Across the world, good job. God, housing, peace. Is there anything not on there that you're curious about? Say again? Love. When we talk, love pops up, like Chris mentioned this yesterday, when we ask leaders, when we ask followers what they want from leaders, love, hope, stability, and trust are the four things they mentioned. Love, hope, stability, and trust. So love is a big player in the world. And I think they roll it into peace and family, but love is not, it doesn't pop up in more than 3% of the responses. Yeah.
It's interesting that God is lower down there. We hear so much today about spirituality on campus and students interested in spirituality.
Yeah.
And you don't see God as a biggie.
And this is the ranking. So I'm glad you asked that question. Health is number 1, wealth number 2, happiness.
And those are pretty selfish way. I want to be healthy, I want to be wealthy, I want to be happy. Oh yeah, then comes my family.
Then comes my family. And this is a clustering. We tried to identify unique clusters, but healthy, happy, safe, close. Close means proximity. Close to me, family. Those were a few different clusters, but they rank ordered right after one another, so I just smushed them together. I don't think they're necessarily unique. But yeah, we don't get to that social stuff until number 4 or 5. Right.
Peace is global peace?
Say again?
Global?
Peace is peace.
Global?
It could be in your
Not
city.
peace of mind?
No, it could be in your city. This is American data, but we've asked 1,000 Iraqis, what do you want? You can imagine. Peace is in there. Yes?
What about knowledge, learning, new opportunities?
Yeah, less than 3% of the folks in America said that's what they want.
Sort of shocking, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you're wealthy, you can buy it from the peanut gallery here. You know, this health, I'm excited that health was number 1. It's another one of those changing the light bulbs thing. Because I always catch something when I'm on a plane. But we don't do what we know we should do necessarily every day. I'm sure there are 3 or 4 people in this room that every day you stick to your program, but most of us don't have a program. And some of us have a program and don't stick to it. Wealth, you know, people want wealth. And we'll see that in another slide in a minute. So I wanted to tell you what people are hoping for. And again, that means they have a bullseye on the wall, and they have resources, and they're saying, I'm going to marshal these resources in some way so that I can hit that bullseye down the road. That's the bullseye. Less than 3% of the people said some of the other things that are on your mind. That means very few people have those other bullseyes. Okay? Now, do we change the bullseye, or do we go where the students are, go where people are, and help them get to their goals in one way or another? questions.
I was just going to ask for clarification on God. Is that relationship with
Stronger relationship with God.
Okay.
Stronger relationship with God. That's exactly what they were talking about. Yep. Any other clarifications needed? Yep.
Friendship.
Friendship is, for Americans, is less than 3%, but it does pop up across the world here and there. So it's on the long list, but it's not more than 3% of the population.
Happiness is number 3, but is there, did any of the people make a distinction between happiness and joy?
Yeah, and we roll those in, you know, so we can only be so discreet when we're doing the coding. But I do remember some joy, be joyful, you know, celebrate my life every day, those kinds of statements. So some people in the 1,000 really got to that deeper level of joy or that deeper level of meaning. Yeah, one or the other. Most people said, I want to be happy.
Anyone say freedom or autonomy?
Freedom is lower on the Americans list and higher on a lot of nations that are unstable. Okay, so it would pop up. These pop up on most lists across the world, but in job and happiness pop up on almost all lists. But that one pops up on a lot of lists in unstable regions, and you know, a third or more of the regions in the world are unstable, so it does pop up.
What about autonomy? What the sense of being?
People don't have a great sense of themselves when they come to talk. When they talk about the future, they don't necessarily talk about self-directedness or self-determinism or autonomy. It's probably couched in there, but they don't really articulate it. Now let's go on to this next slide. I'll come right back. I want to change these questions. And we do change these questions, and we ask students, lots of different researchers ask students, why go to college? So what are your hopes and wishes for the future? A related question about hoping for the future relates to college. Why go to college? Who makes you feel like you matter? Another engagement spinoff would be, why stay in college? Because we can get people to go. We just can't get them all to stay. Okay? And then the last one is, how will college change your life? How will college change your life? That's another well-being question. So you're investing a lot in college. You're expecting a lot of things. How will it change your life? And hopefully you'll come out a better person, feeling good, with more meaning and substance and knowledge. So that's maybe how college changes your life. Let me give you one of the big answers. And you've seen this is the CERT data. And I just love this slide because I get to click a lot. Maybe. Or maybe not. Oh. That's the line we hate, right? It's the green, it's the money line, all right? So why go to college? Well, how many people said this is a very important reason or an important reason for going to college? In the 60s, 40%, 41%. In 2006, 73, 74%. So this is one of the important reasons why I'm going to college, okay? And then the next thing, raising a family. And people kind of, you know, link that in very closely to having money nowadays. And it used to be more equally important to folks, 70-something% in the 70s when it was added. So it's about the same place. But what's happened is it now commingles with having money. So maybe something about our culture shifted that said, if you're going to raise a family, you have to have a lot of money. And so you're going to go to college, you need money and family. You know, that's that end goal down there. Wealth, close to family. Okay? Then we add in a few things that maybe get us excited and develop a meaningful philosophy of life. Not so much. 80-something% in the 60s, and then 40-something% in 2006. So we've had a trade-off. I mean, we had that nice little crossing of the lines there in the 70s. Maybe Carter made us think about a whole new world. I don't think so. But who knows what happened in the 70s? You may know what happened in the 70s. We were able to... Reagan? All right. Blame it on Carter or Reagan. You got both there. But something happened there, and we started looking at the world very differently. Helping others stayed about the same over time, and then becoming a community leader went up. over time. Okay? But people are still telling us through these things, I want wealth, and I want a good family that's close to me. Okay? Now, I used to, when I think about these days, I used to think those crummy little monkeys. They just want to come to this school and get a job and get wealthy. And then I thought about, why did I go to college? You know, here's why I went to college. In my hometown, you worked in the oil field, or you went to college. I worked in the oil field for 3 summers. Wearing denim from head to toe in 100-degree heat with 100% humidity and catching yourself on fire does not make for a good summer. So I said to myself, I'm going to college. My brother was the first person to go to college in our family and finish. I am the last. Parish hopefully will be among the next. But it's missed a lot of branches of our family and generations. But I went to college because I wanted a good job so I could provide for my family and not be offshore half. A lot of my friends saw their dads half the year, literally. Or when Russian oil fields opened up, their dads would go away for 2 years at a time. So the reality of my community suggested, hey, you might want to go to college. My brother paved the way, and then I was able to follow his path. So when I realized, I was like, you know what? I'd probably be in that green line. I might be in that green line. I might have answered this survey. And then the next thing for me would have been raising a family in that blue line. That's where my goals were. Now we'll come back again to what we're hoping for, but I do want to say that why stay in college? I'll show you some data. If we're not engaged, we don't stay in college. And engagement and well-being have this close tie. We'll talk more about that. How will college change your life? We have data. I'm not going to share this with you because it's preliminary in terms of real slides, but college well-being peaks when you're a freshman. Then it goes down. And you've seen that in some of your data. That just hurts my heart. That just hurts my heart. And I've watched this in students. I've watched them. And it's not just, oh, they're dealing with reality now. You know, that's why they're sad and depressed. No, I see them come to college with joy, enthusiasm, hope, and zest. And then they leave college tired. You know? And yeah, we leave our work week tired, but we don't need to gift that to our college students. So I worry about this one quite a bit. I'm not just going to bum you out. Okay, I'm going to try to lift you up towards the end. Okay? Danny Kahneman did a study about, bear with me, okay, proctology exams. You always want to end with less pain than you started with. That was one of the key findings. So we'll try to end with less pain than we start with. What are your hopes and wishes for the future? Why go to college? I'm grappling with this. I'm not telling you this is the reason. But I think we're not asking the right questions. Remember that great scene in Indiana Jones, the first one? The Nazis are digging over there for the Ark of the Covenant. And then Indy's friend comes to him and goes, Indy, I'm digging in the... We may... Yes, sir. Go ahead.
If the freshman year is the peak college experience, why are the attrition rates greatest between the freshman and sophomore year?
Well-being is high, but engagement is not necessarily high. And then hope comes in there too. So I think, I don't think we lose students due to well-being. I think that's part of the equation. I think the engagement issue and the hope issues are bigger players. They feel good. I had a lot of students who I counseled out at the University of Kansas who felt great. But they weren't connecting with people. They didn't like the coursework. They wanted to be at a smaller university. So we tried to help them find a place that made sense for them. But I don't think the well-being does not determine if a college student drops out. But I will say they're happier when they get there right in the beginning. And some are happy when they go away. we'll come back to a little bit of that. But I think, I don't know if we're shy about it or if it doesn't fit with our philosophy. I don't know what it is. But like when I said, why go to college to get a good job? Anybody have like a stomach churning feeling? Anybody say, oh, that's not what we're about? Anyone? Go ahead. What was that about?
Well, after 30 years in higher ed, I'm still an idealist.
Yeah.
I think that people come in order to improve a quality of life,
Yeah.
or to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and not just to see dollar signs.
Well, now wealth is part of this, but when people said, what do you want for the future, you know, we petitioned out wealth and good job. And I think some people may do that in their own minds. A good job may mean I get to provide service to other people. A good job may be, you know, health care for my family. A good job may be stability in my community. So it's not necessarily, I mean, most of our students do not become wealthy, you know, and they choose majors that they know will not lead them to wealth. So I think this good job is, I think we have lumped it together though. I do. Anybody else had that sickening feeling, oh, he's going to turn us into Votex? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you come to college to learn to be who you're going to be, and that is sort of in all spheres of your life. So certainly there's an intellectual development, and that would apply to me in the job. I would hope that you develop in all of the values and meaning of life. I'm an idealist as well after the same amount of time.
And I'm there with you,
Yeah.
but I'm imagining myself writing my first tuition check for parish. And I'm imagining, he's going off to learn more about himself. That's why I'm paying this $20,000 for the semester right now. That's where he's going. He just doesn't know it yet. No. I'm writing this check because he's picking my nursing home. And I want him to know a lot about me and a lot about where I'm going to end up and have the bucks to put me in a nice facility.
Well,
I mean,
I've written that first and last tuition check last year.
all right. Congratulations.
And I felt the same way as a parent as I do as a higher ed professional, that I was very excited that I felt that she was going someplace where she would develop in all those ways.
But might we be different from the typical parents writing the checks?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And might the typical parent be right there with the kid saying, you better get a good job out of this?
I was thrilled when she had one when she graduated.
You know, I'm really struggling with this because, again, when you put the bullseye on the wall, okay? You remember archery? Did everybody take archery during the summer at some point in their life? Everybody in my little town took archery. Well, you had the bullseye at 50 yards, and then you had the bullseye, 20 yards, and then at 50, and maybe at 75 for the long shot. And you built up. So you hit the one at 20, and then you built some efficacy, and then you hit the one at 50, and you built some efficacy, and maybe week 3, you're shooting at the one at 100. Okay? That's how people think about their goals. That's how they think about their goals. They're looking at 100 yards and saying, I want a good job. I have to do these 2 bullseyes to get there. And we're saying, no, graduating from high school, graduating from college, those are the bullseyes that matter. But they're not telling us that. They're telling us, I want to get to the 100-yard away bullseye. And they're going to put a lot of resources into that 100 yards away bullseye. And they're going to put enough resources into the first 2 so that they get to the hundreds. And we're not linking this all up in a time-space continuum for them all that well. Okay? The engagement, I feel good when I'm there. I get to do things I like. And then what will happen to me in terms of well-being, I will grow with the help of others. So we're getting back to that idealism. It's part of the picture, but it may not be the whole picture. So I'm going to boil it down. What are these definitions? Hope, and we had some great presentations by Sage and Marie on hope over the course of these 2 days. So if you want information, take a look at their presentations. Hope the ideas and energy we have for the future. Hope is the ideas and energy we have for the future. The more formal definition is GPA, goals thinking plus pathways thinking plus agency thinking. Goals thinking plus pathways thinking plus agency thinking. Goals thinking involve how we see the future. Pathways thinking are the ideas. Agency thinking involves the energy. GPA, goals thinking, pathways thinking, agency thinking, future, real clear thoughts about the future. Pathways are the ideas and strategies. Agency, that's the energy, the I think I can momentum that gets us where we want to go. Engagement, the way we view it and the way, and I say we at Gallup and Clifton Strengths Institute, we call it satisfaction with and enthusiasm for school. Satisfaction with and enthusiasm for school. We don't get into a lot of behaviors, we don't get into a lot of cognitions, we get into feelings and some behaviors and a little bit of cognitions. Okay? So how people feel about where they are and what they're doing, often because we're cognitively conservative, we take that information in and we make a lot of decisions based on how we feel. Well-being, and this goes back to the question, well-being is a hard nut to crack. So y'all asked James a good question the other night, what is happiness? I use the H word. I don't use the H word, okay? Because well-being is more robust. It's not what we normally think about when we write the word happiness. There I go again. Well-being involves two things, how you see your life and how you feel about your life. How you think about your life and how you feel about your life. So if both of those are good, you have high well-being. If both of those are bad, you have low well-being. If you're somewhere in the middle, then you're somewhere in the middle. But those people who evaluate their life in very positive terms then have more well-being. People who feel good then have more well-being. Put them together, you have a lot of well-being. This is the Gallup student poll. We're launching this in March. We're doing that with over 1 million kids. We're asking them 20 questions about hope, engagement, and well-being. And what we're trying to do is make it easier to drive change. If we think about the constructs that were talked about over the last 2 days, we probably have 75 different ideas. We're saying those are all good. The three that are very good, among the three that are very good, are hope, engagement, and well-being. Let's get behind three that work. We've picked these three. We hope you like them. Let's go at it. So we're measuring hope, engagement, and well-being in over 1 million kids. And we've done that, and college students. So the college student program is right behind the K-12 program. So the K-12 program is ready for prime time. The college student program, the college student poll is right behind it. So probably, we piloted it with thousands of folks. We'll be ready probably in fall. You know, what does this cost? As of now, the 1 million kids are getting everything for free. So we're trying to get underwriters, the do-gooders of the world, to pay for advancing hope, engagement, and well-being in American students, so that students don't have to pay and colleges don't have to pay. That's the grand plan. Now it's like changing light bulbs. You know, will we get to that point? We think we can. We think we can get this funded so that you guys can just take it. But we'll see how that works out. These are some examples of the items. I energetically pursue my goals. I can find lots of ways to praise or praise. And then the latter question looks at well-being. All of it online. An administrator at a site turns it on. The students go in. Let's say you all had laptops in front of you. We would post a student school access code on the board. You would go to the site, you plug in the school access code. For the first 3 years, we're not drilling down to the students, so we'd be able to aggregate the data across all of you. We then share it with the administrator. The administrator then shares it with the mayor. The mayor then shares it with the community. And we start talking about hope, engagement, and well-being. Yes?
For the college survey, have you considered using some of George Koo and his colleagues' questions on engagement? Because they frame it different, but it's very powerful and has guided a lot of decision-making on campuses.
Yes, we've considered it. And we measure it on the back end. So we have an R&D platform where we measure how our stuff relates to George Koo's stuff. Let's have another conversation.
I would love to.
Yeah, because it is powerful. Lots of things are hard. So that's what we're trying to decide. Do we go in, and I'll be very frank with you, do we go in with what some people think works and replicate that? Or do we go in and change the game a little bit and reorient people to something that might work a little better? And that's where we are. So do we graph onto what works and build out of that, which is one plan. And then the other plan is, we predict retention and productivity in America's top companies. And we do the same thing in America's top schools. So we think that we might be able to get at it without 200 questions. So that's where we are. But I'd love to chat with you more.
Have you talked to George about using a subset of some of the most powerful items?
Well, there's no subset that works, but yes and no. So we've entertained this, and I'll be bold. We'll probably go in a different direction because engagement a la coup has been around for a long time, and I'm not sure. And this is up for huge debate. I'm not sure if it's the answer. And we're not saying we have the answer. We're saying in the context of hope, engagement, and well-being and strengths, engagement is one piece. So we're not putting all of our money on engagement. We're linking it. And I'll show you why. Let me show you why. Let me tell you this real quick. When we measure hope and engagement and other things in college students, all of these, and I have to throw in numbers because now I look official and important, all of these things matter. So academic self-efficacy, academic hope, college student engagement, hope, they all relate to first semester GPA above and beyond SAT and ACT. Above and beyond. What relates to spring GPA? Well, many things fall off, and then it's just academic hope. And Sage Rose has demonstrated some of this in her data as well. What predicts whether students come back from winter break, or whatever you call it? So people go away, and they have to decide, I'm going to re-engage or not re-engage. The only two things are academic hope and engagement as we've defined it. The only two things that predict the logistic regression if people come back. Now this is just a representation of engagement in America at K-12, college students, college teachers, K-12 teachers, American people. Americans in general, most people are not engaged. The next category is engaged. So if we have 35% engagement and then we have 45% not engaged, then that leaves us with, I don't want to do math this early, the rest of the people actively disengaged. People who are actively disengaged undermine exactly what we're trying to do on campus. So you have professors, staff, students who are actively disengaged. Now this talks about well-being, so hope, engagement, well-being. This is related to the study that Nan Sook talked about yesterday, how she called it happiness, how the frequency of happiness relates to success, both academically and vocationally. It's actually the frequency of positive affect that relates to success. So we used to think doing well made us feel good. When we look at the data a little more critically, feeling good leads to us doing well. So that's where the kind of the experience side of well-being comes in. These are the Gallup student poll data, and I'm going to just point a couple of things out to you. Look at how the bars kind of taper off from 5th grade to 12th grade for both engagement and well-being. So that's engagement, the first line, well-being, the second. And then the top bar chart, what I want to share with you there is if you're suffering, there's an 80% likelihood that you'll be actively disengaged as a student. So if you show up not feeling good and not thinking good thoughts about yourself, 80% likelihood. If you're struggling, a 40% likelihood. And thriving, only a 15% likelihood. So if you're thinking good thoughts and feeling good, then you have a 54, a 5 in 10 chance of ending up really engaged. Now looking at the American population, again, how does engagement and well-being, and this is where we take engagement out of its little silo and start talking about how it relates to other things that matter. So engagement and well-being, and this slide is oriented in a way that I don't care for all that much, but folks who are actively disengaged have a 51%, 5 in 10 of them are struggling. Folks who are not engaged, 5 in 10 of them are struggling. Folks who are engaged, 6 in 10 are thriving. So we don't have the arrows built yet. We're doing structural equation modeling to look at how engagement drives well-being or well-being drives engagement. We know hope drives well-being. We think engagement drives well-being too, but we're trying to figure that out. So we haven't built the arrows, but we know that if you're thriving, you're quite likely to be engaged. If you're suffering, you're quite likely to be actively disengaged. Let me finish and then I'll take a few questions. How does strengths fit into this? Strengths is the one thing that we know of that has a chance of boosting all three. Strengths is the one thing, developing your personal strengths, whether that's through VIA or Clifton Strengths Finder, Strengths Quest, is the one thing we know of that has a chance of winning the trifecta. Okay? So you name and nurture strengths. Hopefully you get more hope, engagement, and well-being. We know it works for engagement. We have some small hits on hope, but theoretically we're still sticking to that. So we think that drives the trifecta, and then all the positive outcomes you can mention, all of them that you can mention for your students, I could probably demonstrate a link between either hope, engagement, or well-being. All of this happens in the context of good relationships. I want to come back to that full circle with Chris, talking about people matter. If you build a program, they will come. If they come and they don't discover good relationships, they'll go away. Okay? So let's get brass tacks for the last few minutes. Maybe. Maybe not. I'm clicking. That means we're out of time. Strengths. So we've left you with a lot of big thoughts, and now I'm going to drill down a little bit. I'm going to leave you with 4 suggestions. Here's more than 4. If you want to build strengths, help people make novel use of their strengths. Take their top 5, say, Shane, you're futuristic. Go be futuristic in 5 new ways this week. Make it simple. Put it on a postcard. Put it on your business card. Hand it to them. Okay? Create best self narrative. University of Michigan, they do this on the organizational side. It's a big, involved process, but basically, you get feedback from other people about what you look like when you're using your strengths, and then you craft that into a personal narrative. So you can find more information if you just Google best self online. Hope, create a hope-guided imagery. Every time we use hope-guided imageries, and I know they're kind of stilted and phony, and people are like, I need imagery. Every time we use one, it works. Okay? So you create a hope-guided imagery, tailor it to the Seminole Nation, get them talking about whatever you want to within the campus structure. Link hope up to it. I can share resources for that. Highlight individual success models. Yesterday, someone told me 19 of our students at FSU who went through the student success course last year, are now on the dean's list. And one of those 19 is on the president's list. I'm like, you need to build a show around that one person. Because when you say that to me, that's powerful. But in 5 minutes, I'll forget it. If you tell me that Phyllis got to be on the president's list and tell me what Phyllis did and show me her face, then she becomes a model for me. Okay? So we need to do a better job of marketing success to our students. You set we goals, which means you bring people together and say, where do we want to be? How do we get there? You share information. Keeping information, especially during uncertain times, can be a hope killer for faculty, staff, and students. Eliminate obstacles, mentor, engagement, mentor. We need that one person in our life that cares about us. Give real praise and recognition. And here's a fuzzy one I know. Honor the role of best friend. Having a best friend at work, having a best friend at school is one of the best predictors of retention and productivity. Simple as that. And how do we honor that role? I'm not quite sure, but maybe it makes sense on your particular campus. Well-being, the thing that gives you more well-being is when you boost positive affect. So why do gratitude letters work to boost well-being? Because you're boosting positive affect, okay? And decreasing negative affect. So as a psychologist who's treated lots of people with depression, I honor suffering. And I love the transformative process that's created when we get through to the other side. And I see suffering in big groups and small groups of individuals. I honor that. To get people to a place of well-being, we need to get to that place where they have more positive affect in their lives than negative affect. And they have to think good thoughts about themselves. So to do that, in the UK has now adopted a 5-step approach to well-being of its people. Connect with someone, be active, be curious, learn daily, and give like crazy. Give your time, give your resources. Boil it down, Shane. Help with the novel use of strength. So if you want 4 things, help with that. Create a hope-guided imagery specific to your campus, and I can give you the bones of that. Mentor. Students can't come to our campuses anymore. You know, they're on Facebook with 300 friends. They can talk to heads of company on Twitter. Literally, they can get on Twitter and they can tweet with heads of companies around the world. And if they can't come to campus and know people, really know adults on their campus, they're not going to be there in this culture anymore. They're going to go someplace where they can have FaceTime. And then boost positive affect. I think sports are a great way to do this. I think that craft night that you talked about is a great way to do this. I think those are undervalued things on campus. So anything that gets people together and gets them excited. So it helps to have a winning sports team. But I'm not saying we need to invest all of our money there. Invest just as much money in craft night as we do in sports. And there's my email, shane@strengths.org. I am over time, and here's what we're going to do. If you have questions and want to attend the roundtable, we're going to start it right now. For the rest of you who are thinking, you know, that's enough of Shane, which I'm cool with, and we're going to start it in here. We'll give you 3 minutes to go outside and have your break, and then kind of move on to the next place. Does that sound good?
I'm going to make just a handful of things. Just quickly, yes.